So if you're still trying to break into this industry, let's say you're trying to learn a little bit about web development and learn how to become a software engineer, there are shortages for experienced software engineers, and there's no way we're going to get the experienced engineers we need unless people continue to join the industry. So if you, for example, are trying to self-teach or if you just graduated college, there are two things I would highly recommend that you focus on. The first thing I recommend doing is to work on a large project. So work on a larger project. Now, I'm going to get pushback because I'm also going to say using AI tools. So this would mean like doing agentic coding, using Claude Code, prompting your way to a feature, and then reviewing the code. So the steps I would recommend doing is pick a large project you'll enjoy. So if you like doing workouts or if you like baking, make an application that's centered around that goal and just keep on adding features to it. Like you don't want to just build a Minesweeper project, although you can, and that's going to be something I talk about over here. You want one large project, and the reason I'm recommending this is that it just helps you have a better talking point in interviews, and it also helps your name and your project get seen so that a employer can potentially see what you've built and sees that you have the motivation, the dedication to build something large. Okay. Also, a lot of the interesting problems you will not encounter until you reach a certain size of a code base. Okay. It's not until you get enough files and enough lines of code where you start realizing you need to start breaking stuff up and really understanding the structure of your code so it's well designed. Okay. So pick a large project, and then I'm going to say use Claude Code and prompt features and fix bugs. Now, the caveat with this is every time you prompt Claude Code, you need to review every single line change, okay? If you don't have experience in the professional workforce, one thing you're going to end up doing is a lot of code reviews. So other developers will be pushing pull requests, and you need to read through these and kind of make sure you understand what's changing. This is a good opportunity to have a chance to review code that you didn't write. So it's a little bit different, right? When you write the code yourself, it's already like there in your mind and you're just getting it onto the keyboard. Versus when you're reading code that you didn't write, it's like a different thought process to break it down and understand it. So this is, again, a great way to get experience reviewing and then also figuring out ways to refactor. So I would probably say continuously prompt AI to refactor. This could be like asking AI, how might you improve this code? Again, you can probably find people online that can help guide you on like what a good code base looks like and what a bad code base looks like, or what a badly structured component in React might look like. But just trying to let the AI refactor it for you and then you review the code, I think is very beneficial. Okay, so I would continue doing this. And like when I say large project, you should be doing this for like a couple of months. Like you should just be adding features every day, see how far you can take it. Eventually, you're going to hit roadblocks and you're going to have to stop. So on roadblocks, try to debug and solve issues yourself. And that might involve you have to dive into like the Tailwind stylings and like really fix some padding or some margin or some positioning. That might mean you have to load up your dev tools and like look at the errors. Overall, this is going to give you a good holistic overview of how a project kind of evolves over time, and it's going to give you exposure to a large project which you probably have never worked on until you get hired at a company. And then, of course, once you have this project kind of, while you're iterating on it, I would have this set up in some type of continuous deployment. So like continuous deployment to, I don't know, Netlify, or Vercel, or like a VPS, or whatever, Railway. Again, these are things I think you should focus on, and this will also get you exposure to like, okay, how does like a database work? How does deploying an application from GitHub work? You will get exposure of how to commit stuff. So this is like the industry stuff. So like learn about Git and committing those changes. Now the issue with this approach is number two, you're letting AI write the code for you and fix the bugs for you. So there's a whole segment of coding you will not get exposed to, and you still need to like make sure you understand the syntax of code and how it all works. So my other approach I would recommend doing is you need to solve smaller problems. So solve a bunch of small problems. Now, what do I mean by small problems? So for example, you can look at any UI. If you want to be like a front-end web developer, look at any UI. For example, in this application, there is a left sidebar. Can you build this from scratch? So I'm talking about focus on HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and try to build small components, or like, build out a small REST API and understand that whole process. Now, this whole process, I would say, do not use AI at all. Like, just do not use AI. This is something you're going to have to figure out by yourself and really get exposure to the syntax of whatever language that you want, in our case, JavaScript. It's going to give you exposure to how these components are kind of broken up on a larger application. So this might be a React component over here. You might have a React component over here for this help modal that pops up. There is a button over here you're going to have to make a React component for. Or not even a component, right? If you don't want to use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, you could probably even say like React or Vue, or it doesn't really matter. But again, the idea is that you should not be using AI for these things, because again, if you're just agentic coding your way to a solution, there's a lot of stuff you are not going to get exposed to. Okay, so again, smaller problems. And what are some good examples of small components or small problems? Again, here is a bottom toolbar. Can you build that by hand? Can you position things using Flexbox? Can you change the padding, the border radius, the text size, whatever? Can you make a drop down? Instead of just bringing in ShadCN and using ShadCN for your drop downs, try to build a drop down by hand. So like you'd have a button. When you click it, you use JavaScript to hide or show some other panel. That panel needs to be positioned. What happens when you scale down the application on a mobile device? Does this thing even work? Do you know how to make an accessible UI? All this type of stuff that you don't get exposure to, but it's really good to understand, because when you're building out this larger project, you're going to have to keep prompting AI to fix these various things that, you're going to learn over here. Okay. Some other good examples, like once you've gotten the simple stuff, maybe make like a Minesweeper thing. Maybe make like tic-tac-toe. If you want to get really, really adventurous, maybe you can build out a calendar component. Try to emulate, the Google Calendar. Try to just build out this component. You know how hard it is to build out a calendar and have to understand date times and stuff? Like, that's a very, very hard problem. But again, the idea is like, you get exposure to all these small problems, like an accordion, a calendar, a modal, a dialogue. How do you make it responsive? How do you make it accessible? And these are things that you're going to be lacking in skills when it comes to like building stuff out, or like during an interview, that you definitely need to focus on these smaller problems that I think a lot of people are going to start not knowing how to solve themselves. So again, you can also just sprinkle in some random like LeetCode. So these like coding problems that help stress your data structures and algorithms, and just your overall syntax of the language, and how, these higher level patterns of code kind of come into play. Definitely learn like the Gang of 4 design patterns. If you're going to look into learning object-oriented programming, knowing about the design patterns, maybe learning or understanding about the solid principles, dependency injection, all of these like higher level ideas, they kind of go hand in hand with the whole like agentic coding, because when you have a better understanding of, what a strategy pattern is in object-oriented programming, that just makes you a better prompt engineer, right? You can review the code, you see that the code has an issue. Oh, I have this cool strategy I learned from the Gang of 4 design patterns. Can you apply that using Claude Code to the changes you just saw to make it cleaner, make it better? Okay. So these are like the fundamentals, which you cannot skip. Like, these are the things that you're going to be asked during interviews. Most people are probably not going to let you just use AI in an interview. They're going to actually ask you to code something or refactor something in whatever language of your choice. And all this is fair game, right? The idea is that like, okay, you can build something large, and obviously you're passionate about building, you're passionate about like trying to code something with AI, you're up to date with the latest trends of AI tools, but at the same time, you need to understand the fundamentals. And I don't think, unless you actually like intentionally go out there and say, you know what, today I'm going to sit down and I'm going to try to build out a calendar component, and I don't care if it takes me a week to do, that's what I'm going to focus on. And once you're done building that, you start to get a good appreciation of how much effort goes into some of this stuff. I can tell you right now, if you're not a like cracked front-end engineer, building out a calendar component is going to take you a lot of time, especially to make sure that all the edge cases are working properly. And again, like the idea is you get experience to building out like an accordion or whatever, so that later on you're like, yes, I solved that problem. I know how to do it. I just don't want to do it again. So that's when you start reaching out to using ShadCN for pre-existing components, or you go find a third-party component library online, or you go and just ask AI to implement something for you. because you've already convinced yourself you can learn it and you can do it. And why would you waste time doing that again? Okay, so I think this is, in my opinion, the best path forward if you're trying to get into the industry, because if you don't have the fundamentals, you're probably going to fail the interviews. But at the same time, when you're hired, they're going to want you to actually get work done and be very, very efficient, because again, it's going to become more and more competitive to be hired as an engineer, and you're working against other people who use AI and understand what the AI is doing, but you're over here still trying to implement a calendar component, and you're 3 weeks in and you still just don't have it created correctly. And then over here, I'll probably just say this is like the practical thing. So both of these, again, this is not going to guarantee that you're going to get hired, but I will think that you are a more solid candidate if you have something you can talk about. You spent a couple of months building on it. You didn't give up and, jump from one thing to the next thing. You stayed motivated. You stayed dedicated to really building out one large project. It doesn't even have to have Stripe integrated. It doesn't have to have a database. But if you can find an idea for a project that's large enough that you can have like 20 or 30 different like random features in it, just so you have something to talk about and be proud of. But then also at the same time, you still have to be brushing up on these fundamentals. Okay. The other approach that people might recommend is just code all this stuff by hand. Like don't build a project with AI. I don't think that's realistic, because again, when you get hired, more than likely your product owner is going to want you to ship stuff as fast as possible. At least that's kind of like what I'm seeing. The more you can ship, assuming it's not terrible code, the more people are going to enjoy your abilities, right? And I do think there's a lot of people, I've been talking to people who have 20 years of coding experience, and again, they're all in with Claude Code. Like they basically just prompt Claude Code all day. We have the experience, but we've just realized that like there's certain things in coding that just eats up all your time, and you need to start getting used to when a bug that it may take you an hour to figure out because you left off a certain syntax error, or you passed in the wrong parameter into a function, and you literally just, your eyes start glazing over when you're trying to debug it. Sometimes just having an LLM just quickly look through your code and say, hey, the issue is this, so you can move on and remember that issues, okay? So again, like even if you're letting AI fix issues for you, you need to understand why that was a fix. Understand why that code change was necessary to get it working, so that later on your prompting skills will just get even better. Okay. Now, a lot of people are saying like if you don't learn how to use AI now, you're going to get left behind. I don't think that's true. I mean, learning how to prompt isn't too challenging. I've been doing it for a long time now, and there are some like caveats about like getting better context and making the prompts better to get better results. But you can literally just keep prompting over and over again until it works. But if your goal is to save some money and save time, you do want to get well at prompting and get good at adding certain context and getting good at understanding larger code bases so that you are using AI at your full potential. Again, I'm just one person. This is my recommendation. If you were trying to break into the industry now, you need to be doing both of these. And I know it sounds like a bunch of extra work. I would recommend like don't get into this mindset of like, oh, AI is terrible, AI is slop, I shouldn't be using AI to learn. You need to be using both, in my opinion, just to kind of get a feel for like both of these. But yeah, I guess leave a comment below if you think this talk is full of crap. But I do think this is what you need to start doing, especially if you're trying to get hired as a junior engineer. It's not fun to join a company and literally sit there for weeks not being able to ship anything because you don't understand the code. It's nice to get those mini wins, those small, like, that dopamine hit when you actually shipped a feature that users use. But you have to be realistic that unless you have a full-time job doing coding, your fundamentals are going to take a long time to get up to speed. And so I think just concurrently figuring out how to balance these things without going all in on AI, because now you just don't know the fundamentals. And so like it's just going to screw you over in the long run. And again, this is all assuming that AI is going to hit some type of plateau and there's going to reach a point where it can get like 80 or 90% there, but there's still going to be 10% left that you're going to have to dive into and figure out, which is kind of how it is now. Like AI is great. I use it a lot all the time, but I still have to dive into the Tailwind to fix stuff. I have to dive into the JavaScript to refactor stuff. I have to dive into the backend to add in security that the AI forgot to add in. So like all this stuff, definitely important. I should definitely add in some like basic security here too. But yeah, leave a comment. What do you guys think about this? Do you have a different idea of how you should kind of start getting into the industry, what skills you should be leveling up on? And if there's anything I missed in the fundamentals, feel free to add in. I just kind of like threw some stuff out there. And then also with the practical, feel free to leave comments to add into the practical list. All right, have a good day. Happy coding.